So I think this has been a trend on YouTube for a while, and I'd had these two shower curtains lying about in my room, so I wanted to try this for myself, creating a booklight out of a very inexpensive shower curtain. The other piece of the puzzle for me was this boom pole that I've had since I was like 14 or 15 for shooting my short film projects back then, and then just like a clamp. I don't know how well you can see it in this shot, but I've put a clamp on the top of a light stand and the boom pole's just kind of balanced, but you can see it does the job. This is something which I'd never really be able to take to set. I just wanted to see whether I could get a different quality of light with this, and also to have a bit of a practice with shooting interviews, more specifically with two cameras, figuring out what the different angles were, where to place the light, because I had a shoot coming up for this, and before I packed my bags, I wanted to just get everything out and see if I could get some nice looking interview frames. And the other thing I wanted to try was exposing skin tones with false colour and really getting that down. Naturally, to keep these videos coming, this is completely unscripted, just a bit of a commentary for this video, but you can see at any point, feel free to pause the video and you can see which attachments I have on my panel light. I'm running the F22C, my Amaran light, which by itself is just really nice. It's an all-in-one kit, 2 layers of diffusion, honeycomb grid. It's really good for the type of thing that I shoot. And you can see here, skin tones in the pink. I did some research. The skin tones stay roughly in the same place across log and Rec 709, which is something I was never really sure of, but obviously log mainly affects that upper end, the highlights of the image, where the skin tones kind of lie in the same place on the ARRI scale for both. You can see this is me exposing my skin tones properly, and then just for the sake of this setup, I closed the blind so I didn't have to worry about the windows not clipping. You can see on the very right of frame that the windows are very bright. I don't always mind that, it's just when it's really distracting, I like to kind of blot those out if I can. And then I had two shower curtains. The first one was giving me a bit of a yellow tint, so I decided to go for this thinner shower curtain, and we'd actually just put the softbox frame on and the honeycomb to keep it kind of like focused in on the shower curtain. And you can see I'm just dialing in different things. We introduced this backlight. I mean, this is all just practice really, and you can see me turning on my key, and then the backlight there just gives a little visual interest in the back of the frame. Maybe dialed in a little bit too brightly for me, but you can see, leaving us with a pretty nice looking image. Now, as far as what these tests taught me, a lot of these frames do look very similar, and I just wanted to get out of my head whether I can get something that has a little bit more of an interesting wrap, because you'll see I went back to my original F22C setup at the end of this video, and you can see it's a lot more focused. It's still really soft light, but in terms of what the wrap looks like, you can see it's kind of like there's a gradient on the side of my face in these tests, and then you can see I'm like slowly removing bits here, and the spread just becomes a lot more flat. So the room is more lit, which is quite nice, because sometimes I go to a room which doesn't have great ambient light, and you put on the F22C with all its attachments and it's like really dramatic in terms of what the contrast levels are looking like. So then throughout this as well, I was kind of exploring how to adjust the image by changing the ND, changing the aperture. If we're not worrying about the windows blowing out, can we get better balance between the ambient light in the room and how well lit our subject is? I think something that this has taught me is the honeycomb grid creates a really pleasing light on the face, but it does limit, obviously that's the whole idea of the honeycomb, to limit where the light lands. But because I'm often running just these two lights, my F22C and 60X, it creates a really dark looking image. So potentially running some interviews without that honeycomb grid, when we don't need a really like focused and well-shaped key light source, sometimes the look you need to get is something that isn't. Like, look at this frame here, you can see how different it already looks. It's the face is really well shaped and the light placement is good, but you can see the whole background just drops into darkness. I think what these tests taught me is not necessarily as much about the quality of light and how soft the light is, but the impact that having a bigger light source can have. And I really like how it just wraps around the face a little bit more and brings up that ambient feel. So this is the image I just showed you with my normal setup, and then with the shower curtain placed in front and the grade adjusted. But you can see it just brings up the ambient levels. in the room by so much. And then this is the light with just the softbox frame to contain the light a little bit, and this is just the panel and the shower curtain, and you can see it's a very different look. It's two different styles, so the light isn't shaped quite as nicely, but the spread is a lot bigger, and if that's the look you're going for, maybe something more naturalistic, then I actually would opt to use this setup. Just to replay this clip from earlier, I think the shower curtain is so big that it doesn't really matter what layers of diffusion you put behind it. When you see videographers bouncing a light with a softbox into another source, or kind of putting a frame in front of an already diffused light source, you hit this point of diminishing return really quickly. I think what I've learned here is that the F22C panel is not that large of a light source. You can see there's a huge benefit to having a light source which is as large as the light source you're trying to replicate, like a window. So the lights that I have are often to kind of extend the light that's already in a space. But when you're shooting in a space that's already quite dark, like the room that I shot this video in, which is the darkest room of the house, then you can see why having a bigger light source would be more beneficial, because it wraps the light more, you get more of an ambient, and it's as if there is a window off camera. I just think the light is less flattering and you don't have as much control over it. That's obviously the big problem. The other thing was, you can see there's a mirror in the back of this shot, but if you're shooting against windows, then maybe you do need a smaller light source anyway, so you don't get that reflection in the glass. There's always a million things to be thinking about, but hopefully these tests were useful to someone. At least they were to me, in a way that I didn't really expect, but not really improving my workflow in any way, just showing me options that I could have and how to start thinking about the way I'm lighting things. Now we've done all that research on different types of lighting, you can see from the shadow here, I'd used 2 layers of diffusion, super soft lighting, and because of the egg crate, the light almost perfectly falls on my face but doesn't spill anywhere, which is nice. But I wonder what this interview would have looked like if we'd done a booklight kind of thing, where we were still wrapping the light from the window, but more of the light was hitting here. I think the problem for me is this is so moody. For the shoot that I was doing, it's like a testimonial video, it looks really moody. I think this is cinematic, it looks great, but sometimes when I'm going for a more naturalistic look, it's nice to have the light just wrapping my face a little bit more. You can see here, even with 2 layers of diffusion and an egg crate, the light is just like, there's like a hard line on the side of my face here. I think the light is placed really well. It's hitting the part of my face that I want it to hit, but sometimes it's nicer to just have a more subtle wrap around this way. I want to work towards shooting interviews where you can't tell that it's lit and it looks really naturalistic. I don't think the backlight helps. It's a very dramatic backlight, but even the way that this light is hitting the scene, it's just so dark on this side, doesn't look natural at all. So bringing in that booklight might help to counter this. My problem is that I'm working with very few fixtures. I've got my key light and my backlight, and that's it. It would be really nice to bring in a fill and just have it on a really low percentage, just to make it look a little bit less moody, or even a light kind of bouncing in the corner up here. This was a really big room. I could have put a light pretty far away, but on a high percentage, just to kind of bounce back this way and fill in some of the background. But I'm working with what I have. I think for now the shower curtain could be a good solution to just get a bigger source, which will hopefully lead to more natural looking interviews.